With the quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:30 p.m. This is a regular, now I don't have my normal preamble. I feel like I've done it so many times, I should know it from memory, so we'll see how this goes. This is a regular meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee, which normally occurs on the fourth Thursday of each month. The meeting notice and agenda were posted more than 24 hours in advance of this meeting at the middle school, the high school, and the SAU 41 office and on the website. I would like to introduce myself, Darlene Mann, and the members present for this evening's meeting. Starting on my right is Cindy Van Conant, Brian Rader, Lauren Ridstrom, Raul Blanchet, Matt McGuire, Dave Blenn, and Tom Enright have excused absences for this evening. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Assistant Superintendent of Student Services Bob Thompson and our BA Kelly Seeley for their attendance at tonight's meeting. If you could all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So at this time, I'll ask if anyone has any agenda adjustments. We'll have the Student Services overview first, and then run through kind of the normal parts of our meeting with the financial and school board updates, and then continue on with some FY21 discussions. Everyone's good with that. I can move on to an appointment of a meeting observer, which I believe is Lauren for tonight.
All right, let's keep it moving then.
All right.
You're not feeling good, huh?
Approval of minutes. This is the best. This is the fastest part of the meeting. We always make up time at this very beginning part. For the approval of minutes, we would be reviewing the August minutes. I know there were some changes going back and forth. I'm not sure if
Yeah, I got all the feedback
changes
from everybody.
in.
Yeah, I haven't updated yet, but I have all their comments.
Okay, so everyone, I'm not sure if you had a chance to review anything Raul included. Lauren asked for an adjustment, just to clarify some of the information on the audit.
Audit and then some wording.
Okay, you know what, why don't we hold off, because I think, Lauren, your comments went to me and Matt specifically, or did they go to everybody?
I thought everybody.
Oh, they went to everybody, okay.
They were shown in track changes on the
Okay.
report.
Okay, great.
Everybody got a
But then
copy.
Okay.
In the final copy?
Yeah, the one that I saw had your comments in.
Lauren couldn't see his own comments.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Great. So at this point, I'll take a motion to accept the amended minutes from the August meeting.
I'll make a motion to accept the amended minutes.
From Raul, seconded by Brian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous for those present, 600. Great. No public this evening. So we can move right on into our Student Services overview. I'd like to again welcome Bob Thompson. This is your first visit to us in your new capacity as Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. And I'm sure, as Kelly mentioned to you, we kind of just like to have this overview, annually. Some years it's a little more in-depth than others, depending on what's happening. And I know there were some recent changes which make the timing of your attendance here really great, because there are some issues that have come up, and I hope you'll be addressing those this evening as well.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you for the invitation. So we'll get started. Basically what I'd like to look at is we'll cover successes, student data, we'll look at revenue source challenges, budget overlook, budget drivers, and then a look ahead for our FY22. So just starting with some of the successes, and as all of you know, I can take zero credit for any of these, because this is really the direct results of Amy Rowe and all of the hard work that she's done with her program development. So I'm really here to celebrate Amy's success over FY19. So one of the big changes that took place, and some of these have more budget impact than others, but they are important when it comes to the function of student services. We put in place a assistant principal for student services at the high school. Essentially, we consolidated many of the things that we would call student services. That's special ed, that's 504, that's ELL, that's counseling, and put those under the domain of an administrator. To achieve this with minimal budget impact, there was an elimination of the 504 coordinator position, and the responsibility for 504s went to the counseling department, which is fairly consistent with what you see with most high school counseling departments. They manage 504s because they work with those students directly on an ongoing basis as part of their caseload. Also,
Just one quick thing, do you want questions throughout?
you tell me, what would you like?
Whatever's easier for you.
Why don't we get to the end of each slide,
Okay.
and then we'll go slide by slide for questions.
Perfect.
Also, there was an implementation of what we call the Choices program at the high school. And essentially what Choices is it offers kids a variety of opportunities and pathways to graduation. This may take the form of helping students achieve their high set, which is what we used to refer to as the GED. It might be helping them gain access to an internship or an extended learning opportunity, what we call an ELO. It might be helping a kid access a VLAX class. What we know is the number of students that are entering our schools that are exploring a non-traditional path is consistently growing, and Choices is a response to that. Also, one of the achievements this year was we had DOE Indicator 13 on-site review. So the indicators in special ed, as many of you know, they're really compliance reviews where the Department of Ed comes in and sees how we're doing on a variety of different areas in special education. Indicator 13 is specific to transition. So it is a requirement of an IEP team, if a student is the age 16 or over, to have transition goals and transition process outlined in their IEP. So when the DOE did their review this year, we received high marks. We're in full compliance when it comes to our ability to help students transition from their preschool education to life after high school. So that's a pretty big deal. Also, there was the creation of our life skills apartment for activities of daily living. So essentially, as members of RSEC, we now rent an apartment where our high school students are bused using our own transportation to the academy, where there is an apartment where students get to practice extremely important life skills. This is, not only best practice in terms of giving kids the skills that they're going to need as they transition into adulthood, but also there's a lot of cost savings here when we're doing our own transportation, we're engaging in activities that are sort of on-site in our own apartment as opposed to having to go out into the community and pay for some of these activities. And then one that happened at the middle school is what we call the NECC program at the middle school. And essentially, we identified last year a cohort of students transitioning from the elementary school to the middle school. And this is classic of Amy and her program development, these students all were slated to be placed out of district. But again, with an emphasis on, one, we really want to educate kids in the community in which they live. It's really an important value. And also looking at capping our costs, Amy created this NECC program. It's really a school within a school. So the New England Collaborative for Children is an out-of-district residential placement. It is a school that is held in very, very high regard to the point where if you want to go to this school, you're going to be put on a waiting list, and it's going to take time to get into this school. So Amy, working with the folks at NECC, said, can we build a school within a school? Could we actually have a teacher from this program come? Can we put this program, Cindy, can you hit bring me? See if that. Can we actually take, because we can't send kids there, would it be possible for us to have the program housed within our school? And we're able to meet the needs of a small cohort of students, and it is a significant cost savings. And I'd also note that the students in the program started out in a very restrictive environment. They were essentially just accessing this NECC classroom for the majority of their program. All of the students in this program are now mainstreamed, not for their full day, because they do have some significant needs. But one of them graduated out of the program, is in completely a mainstream environment. And then the two other students are accessing more of their day in the regular ed environment than they are in the special ed environment. This would not have necessarily happened if we had sent them off to an out-of-district placement or a residential placement. So not only do you have the cost savings, but you really are achieving something great, which is these kids are being educated in their community with their typical peers, and they're making substantial growth. So these are FY19 successes. I'd be happy to answer any questions specific to this slide, or we can move on. Darlene?
So just for the assistant principal position, that's Laura DeGennaro?
It's Lauren DeGennaro.
Okay. I just want to make sure I kind of know who's doing what. And then on that NECC program, so the staff that teaches is like we contract with them to come here and provide those services?
Yes.
And so do we also have to, I think when Amy first talked about this, there was some type of requirement for the staffing that was necessary. So I know it was at least one person from that school itself, but do the students have other para support as well?
They do. So the lead teacher in the program is a staff member of NECC. Each one of the students in the program has their own paraeducator. Those paraeducators are employees of the district. In addition, there's a number of other services and supports. For example, one day a week there's a BCBA from NECC who comes, consults with the program, and works with the teachers. And the program actually has room for up to 8 students. So we're looking to build capacity to add students to this program, because right now we're not at that number. So we could, in the future, be able to add to that program.
Could you explain what a BCBA is?
Yeah, they are a board-certified behavior analyst. And basically their job is to come in, work with students, review their program, collect data on their behavior, and then be able to make recommendations to IEP teams, to classroom teachers, to paraeducators to help improve outcomes for students. So it's helpful across a wide range of students with disabilities, from students with autism who might be nonverbal, to even to students who maybe have some behavioral issues or an emotional disturbance.
So the BCBA is looking at those and evaluating those students involved in this program. And we don't have a BCBA. We do.
We do, and we're actually very fortunate. We actually have
yes, I remember
2. We have Shelley Harris and Michelle McGinnis. Michelle, who just finished her BCBA, and people will tell you that is one of the most difficult positions in a school district to fill. I can tell you, Milford school districts, it took them a year of a search before they found a BCBA, because they're just not out there. It's a very difficult certification to obtain.
As you said that, I remember, I think Amy mentioned someone was in the process of their certification and things like that, and we were looking for one, so, okay.
Yeah, it's one of those services that is typically contracted out. So the fact that the district has 2 BCBAs on staff is a significant cost savings to the district.
Excuse me, non-traditional programs are growing. Could you just give me an idea of the order of magnitude? If you've got 900 high school kids, just tell me how many kids you're talking about.
Oh, Tom, I wish I knew the answer to that. I can get you an answer to that, but
I mean, 25, 30?
Oh, no, we're talking, I'm going to estimate the number of kids. If we look at just at Virtual Learning Academy and kids taking online classes, at the high school, you're talking about hundreds of kids. Okay. Out of a school of 850 students. At the middle school, the number's lower. I think when I left, we were about 25 kids. It is really seen as a viable alternative path for students to get credit for particular courses that gives them the flexibility.
Oh, I think I misunderstood. You're saying non-classroom learning.
But, well, in addition, that's just one example.
I thought it was kids who were, just weren't thriving in the classroom and were...
It can be. So there is a number of students, and again, I can get you the actual numbers.
That's okay.
That are working, the mainstream classrooms, it's not working for them. And rather than these students, dropping out, we put very individualized programs in place, either for them to get their high set, or maybe they go do some vocational work out in the community. They might engage in an internship, but the numbers do steadily continue to increase. It used to be the student who maybe wasn't meeting with academic success. Now there really is no clear definition of the students who are accessing these sort of non-traditional paths.
So if there are all kinds of kids in online programs, how the heck are those monitored? Who takes care of those?
Yes, so right now, it's one of the counselors at the high school who works in the Choices program, and it's we have a special education teacher in there as well. And their job is really to essentially, I hate to use the word case management, but it is to monitor each one of the students in whatever program that they're engaged in.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question.
Raul?
And I'm not sure how to ask this question, but when I hear all these successes, and they sound wonderful, I think they're great programs, I want to get a sense for how much of that needs to be done as part of the program versus it's nice to do because we're a top-ranked school and we have a top-ranked program, and that's what we need to do. And as a result, what portion of the cost incurred is borne by us, and how much is reimbursed by programs from the state or the federal government?
Yeah, well, and we're going to talk in a future slide about revenue, because we've got some good news here. I've got some bad news when we start to talk about the revenue side of things.
Okay.
But I would say, these items, having worked very closely with Amy and having been part of some of the development of like the NECC classroom, were all born out of a need. I wouldn't say that they were necessarily born out of a, well, wouldn't we like to have? Because there's a lot of things we'd like to have that we don't have. But I'll give you, I'll go back to the VLAX example. We are starting to see an increased number. We go from 12 to 50 to 100 to, creeping forward. We've got to get a handle for this. We've got to build a program. Or we have students that are dropping out or they're not engaging. We've got to get a handle on this. So a lot of the program development, I think, has just been the result of, just having the foresight to say, okay, we've got 3 students that could go out of district at a substantial cost, but we also might be able to get creative and educate them here at a much lower cost. So from the examples that we see given here, I would say we're talking about the things that are born of necessity out of some type of challenge.
Okay.
So on the choice program, from a budgetary sense or perspective, are those costs for that program part of SPED? Are they part of the regular curriculum?
Both. Yeah. There really is both. And just so you're aware, really it was a realignment of staff when we instituted choices. So, Frank, for example, worked in a different program, and when we saw this need arise and saw our numbers in another program sort of steadying or going down, we said, let's allocate this staff member to this new program. So when you look at choices, the additional costs incurred, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, was not significant because it was really just realigning the existing staff that we had.
Realigning them to what? To SPED or to?
Well, I think you would, so yes, from special education to choices, which I would say choices is sort of a hybrid. We have students in there who are in special education. In fact, there's a large number of students in there in special education, but it's not a special ed program. Because if you have a kid coming to access choices because they're doing a lot of online work, that they could be an accelerated student. So you have to look at it almost as a hybrid program. There is students in there from special ed, but there's students in there from regular ed, and therefore there's a blending of how we allocate those staff members in terms of some comes from regular ed and some comes from special ed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just to give you some perspective with the student data, so this is as of this September. There's 140 students in the co-op, that's 7 through 12, that qualify under IDEA as students with disabilities. There's 170 students who are on 504 plans. We have 7 English language learners from a variety of countries, and we'll talk a little bit later because that number is increasing. We have 8 students that are in out-of-district placements, and we'll talk later because that number is actually going to go down significantly. We have 2 students who are identified under IDEA but attend charter schools, and we have 2 students, again, who qualify under IDEA who attend the Hollis Montessori School.
Could you remind me again what 504 plan is?
So a 504 plan in some regard is similar to an IEP, but with an IEP there are a certain number of disabilities that qualify. Under 504, essentially 504 provides access to students who may have a disability that alters a major life function. So you have a student who, just to give you an example, maybe has difficulty, they're in a car accident and they have, they lose the loss of their legs and they require certain accommodations to provide them access. So they don't necessarily have an educational disability, but they have something that is altering a major life activity. And sometimes students are on 504 plans for a short amount of time, but it's not with the level of intensity of an IEP that has very clearly designated areas of disability.
Bob, 140 students identified. That's like 11 or 12% of the student body, which is significantly under the statewide average. Am I correct?
Absolutely. But what I would, often caution people is it's very challenging to look at the number when you really need to look at the need.
Yeah.
Because although that number, does fall under the state average, I would make the argument that, people, families who have children with disabilities, when they're looking around the state, they look at the quality of program we have, and they may move here and have a child with a significant disability. So it's more about looking at the need of the child than it is looking at the number. But yes, you are correct. The number is below the state average. Raul?
It seems to me the 7 English language learners number is rather low. Isn't it?
Comparatively, yes. When you look at other districts, it's very low. However, we just had a family move in from another country with 4 students in one family, and they showed up in mid-August. So it's the increase that we've seen in the last couple of years that has made it challenging, given the fairly limited resources we have in ELL. But overall, yes, that number is fairly low.
Can I ask for future reference when you show a chart like this, if it is useful to compare to state averages, for example?
Yeah, we can certainly.
Because that can provide some trend data. It makes it easier to understand the significance.
Okay. All right,
Thank you.
moving along. Okay, so we'll get just to the revenue piece. So, and this is where we have a little bit of bad news. But,
A little bit.
maybe not a little bit. Okay, so essentially I've learned a lot about revenue streams in special education in the last 4 months. So basically there's 3 major revenue streams in special education. One is through Medicaid, the other one through IDEA, and the other one through special education aid. And I know that you know quite a bit about this. But I'm going to start with Medicaid. And essentially what I've included for you is a memo entitled Medicaid to Schools Legislative Changes. I know some of you are already aware of this, but essentially, our schools receive a revenue source through Medicaid through Schools program, which is run by the Department of Health and Human Services. This is a program that allows us to receive reimbursement for rehabilitative services that we provide students that are medically necessary. So if a child qualifies for Medicaid because they have a pretty significant disability or they meet a certain income threshold, families are permitted to seek reimbursement for the medical services that they receive. Schools are also allowed to do that too. Now, in order to do that, you need an order from a medical provider. Now, there was emergency rules that were put in place on Thursday, August 29th that limited the definition of medical providers. So the language used to include doctors, nurses, and there was a line in the law that said, and other practitioners of the healing arts. That one term, other practitioners of the healing arts, included guidance counselors, speech language pathologists, OTs, school psychologists. It really was a catch-all for anyone who provides a medically necessary service to a student. They eliminated that line. And the Department of Health and Human Services said the only people who can issue orders for Medicaid reimbursement is a physician, physician's assistant, or an advanced practice registered nurse. Nearly all of our revenue and reimbursements through Medicaid to schools does not fall under that category. It falls under the category of other practitioners of the healing arts. As a result of that change, the co-op will see a significant reduction in their revenue. This has hit all schools. I was at a meeting recently and I was talking to the directors from Manchester and Nashua. They're losing millions of dollars, millions of dollars. It's really having a serious impact. So in light of the rule changes, you've taken some course of action. One is we've sought counsel to be able to see what are our options. So we're working with our legal counsel to determine what avenues that we have to try to reclaim some of that lost reimbursement. And basically what council is saying right now, we should still log all of our Medicaid services. That's just a matter of best practice. We shouldn't submit them for reimbursement because we can't, because they don't qualify. But we're going to continue to log until we know whether or not these emergency rules become permanent rules. We are also in the process of adjusting our FY21 budget, which we're crafting as we speak, to adjust for the fact that we are not counting on Medicaid to schools revenue, because right now with the current emergency rules in place, there really is none. And then also what we're doing is we're taking a look at FY20 budgets. The good news on this front is we had a student in an out-of-district placement graduate from the co-op, so that will sort of ease the burden of the $170,000 that we may lose through Medicaid to schools. Also, we're working very closely with the New Hampshire Association of Special Educated Administrators, also the New Hampshire Superintendents Association, which we actually know somebody on that board, and the Association of Business Administrators. They're really circling the wagons. I was at a meeting with the director of DHHS Medicaid program, Mr. Henry Lippman, and there was a lot of tough questions asked about this really major loss of revenue. His explanation for this is we are out of compliance with the federal law. The federal law does not contain the language other practitioners of the healing arts. So DHHS says this is just us being in compliance with the law. Those of us who work in education are saying, no, this is a major loss of revenue for our schools. So we're going to continue to work on that Medicaid to schools, but right now we're not counting on that as a source of revenue. For IDEA, again, we're seeing a trend, and it's the same with special education aid, where the revenue that we're receiving from IDEA continues to go down. So, that obviously on the revenue side is hurting us, same with special education aid as well. So when we're developing our FY21 budgets, we're doing it with the mindset of our revenue numbers are going down. Any questions about our revenue?
I read this and I have about 7 questions, so I don't know.
Yeah,
Let me
hopefully I have 7
quickly,
answers.
you may be able to answer some of them on the fly.
Yeah, we'll see.
It seems to me that maybe what's wrong with hiring a doctor to be a permanent staffing in the school and keep submitting the requirements?
Yes, so that is something that we are looking at. Can we get contracted services to come in and write the orders? There's a couple of issues. There's confidentiality issues, so parents would have to agree to do that.
Give them a security clearance.
Second of all, I talked to a district the other day that is very similar to our size, very similar to our demographic, who told me that the day after the rule change, they called 10 physicians in their community and 0 returned the call. And I can tell you from our own practice in the building, when we try to do a release of information, even to talk to doctors, they don't return our calls. So, and then we also need to do a cost-benefit analysis to say, okay, we receive a total of $275,000 in revenue for Medicaid to schools. Is it worth hiring a staff physician? Where's the cost benefit of that? So all of those are on the table for discussion and analysis, but
So are you planning to look into that, or?
Not planning to. We're
We are,
already
okay.
doing that. Yeah.
Is there any new legislation in the works? And do we
So
know
there was a
who may be
meeting of
submitting the
the,
legislation?
There was a meeting last Friday of JELCAR, which is the Joint Legislative Action Committee for Rulemaking. I've learned a lot of acronyms in the last couple of months. And essentially, this body has the authority to stop emergency rules that are put in place by state agencies, to put the hold on them. So the New Hampshire Association of Special Education Administrators went there, the superintendents went there, the business administrators went there. They submitted testimony. GELCAR would not hear the testimony, and then proceeded to put the emergency rule in effect until February of 2020, until a permanent rule could be put in place. So the answer is that on the legislative end, our last opportunity to do that was last Friday, and it was denied.
For payback or, funding back from the state or the federal government, are there any payments in transition? In other words, the ruling said as of August 29th. Does that mean that if you had a request submitted, it will be accepted?
It will. So
Or is everything-
anything before August 29th will be accepted under the previous rules that went into place on August 29th.
So do
yes.
we know how much of the total, how much is pending?
We don't, because we are still in the process of submitting that.
Okay, so I hope you can give us an update on this maybe sometime in the next 2 or 3 months.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And you have to remember that through the summer, there's just fewer services that we
I understand.
provide. So it's kind of a catch-up for the part of the year through June, so.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so our FY21 budget outlook. I actually think that there's some pretty good news here. So our population of students aging out for FY21 is increasing. This is going to be is in line with the second one as well. The number of out-of-district students is going to go down next year at the approximate cost of about $500,000. That's a pretty significant decrease in our out-of-district costs. Of course, we know there's times of feast and famine, and there are some students in future years down the pipelines that will have, will move in to the co-op, but we're looking at FY21 as a significant decrease in our out-of-district costs for special education. And along with that comes a substantial decrease in transportation, because as I know you're aware, a significant cost associated with our out-of-district placements is not always the tuition, it's the transportation. So in addition to the tuition going down, we'll also see some savings in transportation and other related services that we provide students. Other than that, there is no significant program changes that are proposed. I mean, there are a number of really quality programs, whether it's the NEC program at the middle school, the FIMUS program at the high school, Choices program. The programs in place are really doing an excellent job of meeting the needs of the current students that we have, and so there will be no program development. Quite honestly, the program development for FY21 is at the elementary. We have a number of students in our elementary schools, in our pre-K and our K, with some pretty significant needs. And so the focus there is, early intervention, creating programs at the earlier ages so that when we get to the co-op, those students are really set up for success. So FY21 budget drivers. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ELL numbers. So we have an immediate need for a full-time equivalent for a full-time ELL teacher. This will be shared across the SAU, so this full-time position is not completely being absorbed by the co-op. But relative to that, if we look at number 2, shift our shared OT position to Hollis. So essentially, we have people who provide related services to our students, and they work across all 6 districts. But we often look and see where is the majority of their time spent, and they're owned by that district, and then the other districts are billed for those services. Right now, the position that's owned in the co-op is our occupational therapist position. What we intend to do for FY21 is we'll have that occupational therapist position owned by Hollis, and we will own the new ELL position because they'll be servicing the needs of students spending a lot of the time in the co-op. So it's really just sort of shifting around who owns the position and how we bill for that. Also, the one thing that we will see in the co-op next year is an increase in reading services. Currently, at the middle school, there's a large number of students receiving very intensive reading interventions and support. In grade 8, those students will travel up to the high school. I mean, many of the students have made tremendous gains. When you look at some of the reading interventions that the district has, whether it's Read 180, System 44, Wilson, OG, we really do a good job of targeting the needs of students and providing them the reading support that they need. That support, which currently exists in grade 8, is going to shift to grade 9 next year. And then the other thing, which I think is a really wonderful thing, is the overall increase in participation of after-school and extracurricular activities. Our students with disabilities and our students with significant disabilities, including students in out-of-district placements, are now engaging in a very high rate in after-school activities here in the co-op, at both the middle school and the high school. This includes our unified sports teams, but it also includes things like art club and other clubs as well. This is really wonderful. We have students who are educated out of district, who after school get to come and they get to participate in activities with their peers that they may have known from elementary school, or they may have gone to school with at one time or another. This is inclusion at its best. However, it comes that there's cost associated with this, and this is part of FAPE, of free and appropriate public education for a student, is access to those after-school activities. So not only is it the right thing to do and a great thing to do, but it's also the legal thing to do. And so as a result, we see increases in nursing coverage. We often have to hire nurses to come in for after-school activities, paraeducator coverage, and then also transportation. You know, these students, if they're in an out-of-district placement, they need to be transported here to the school from that placement, or they need to be transported home after the activity has concluded. So there is cost associated with that. It's the cost of doing business, and I think it's good practice on our part. And then, again, we talked about this FY20 budget driver. We need to cover those revenue costs. You know, Kelly and I and Amy have had several conversations. We're not counting on the Medicaid to schools reimbursement. You know, we're going to fight to ensure we can maximize our revenues, but the reality is it is a huge unknown, and therefore we really can't count on that when it comes to budgeting.
So what's your sense right now as to how close to revenue neutral or collectively where these things are?
I don't. Kelly, do you have a?
That's next month, Raul.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give us a little time on that.
Yeah.
Why are you starting with a baseline of revenue neutral?
Well, why not?
I like these significant savings aspects, so I think we're going to be ahead.
I mean, but basically, as to who owns which program, do you get together once a year with the other districts to figure that out?
I've only been doing this for 3 months, so I'd ask Kelly, do we get together once a year?
Well, once a year, Bob will,
Yeah.
no.
Write that down.
No, well, no, we collectively, we look at the students that are in each district and decide what percentage of those shared people are going to be, you know, allocated to each district.
Right.
So it's an annual thing that we do. And then we refine it, like for the budget process, that's an annual thing. And then when school actually starts, there might be some adjustments to be
So this
made.
type of meeting and action, this is like the first time you've done this? No?
No.
No.
Are you talking about Bob? Or
I'm
the
talking
first time
about-
you?
Sharing
This practice?
resources?
No.
The reviewing all these programs collectively as a set of.
Oh, no, this
Oh,
is
no.
a longstanding practice of the
Yeah.
district. Yeah. So again, most of this stuff we've talked about when we look ahead to the future, just monitoring IDA grant allocations, the numbers continue to go down. A lot of the revenue shifting that's occurring. Sped aid revenue dropped 1 year out, so just looking and trying to project what revenues will look like.
So is there the potential, if we're not billing for Medicaid, so as you're calculating this, the reimbursement we would expect for special education aid, if we get a Medicaid reimbursement, that comes out of what we can submit for the special education aid. So if we're not submitting for Medicaid, doesn't that increase the cost of a student that might make them now eligible for special education aid? Whereas if we were being reimbursed through Medicaid, they might not then be eligible? Like, is there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that Medicaid reduces our special ed aid
Okay.
allocation. I can double check.
Yeah, just.
Yeah, I can do that. So But
I know
what,
that the formula's very convoluted and,
Yeah.
you know, maxing out, you know, you have to get to a certain level and they're always changing percentages and things like that and thresholds. But that would just, if it were normally excluded, and we were able to include it, maybe there's a
but
little bit of offset.
and even if that's true, the issue that we're gonna have, so the good news is our out-of-district placements are going down by $500,000. That's great news. That $500,000 is actually a significant amount of revenue
From
right
special
here,
education.
right? Because, you know, for special education aid, right now the number I believe is around 57,000. When a student's program exceeds $57,000, we get a pretty significant reimbursement through special ed aid revenue. When that number decreases by $500,000, you will see it on that special ed aid revenue side. That number will go down. And then just the other consideration, and this is really more planning ahead in the future, not necessarily for next year, but you know, looking ahead 3 years out, we have some students with some pretty significant needs that will be coming to the co-op. Again, we're programming for them in Holliston and Brookline, but you know, again, feast or famine. You know, we'll have students aging out. We'll get a little bit of a respite, but then we're going to be finding ourselves with some students with significant needs and programming down the road. And I think, any other questions?
I was just going to say, though, I think what is really helpful as we go into March meeting is in these years, and we've had one or two of them recently, where we have said there's a decrease in special education. And I think, you know, being able to communicate that, show people what those reductions are, makes the message maybe 3 years from now
Yeah.
a little bit, you know,
Yeah, 'cause we told you that.
easier.
Yep.
We say, you know, no, we have, you know, it is a number that, you know, we have seen reductions in prior years. So, you know, but
Yeah.
here we are again because of just the nature of the district and
Yeah.
students age into it. So.
Absolutely. Anything else?
Yeah, just, so we inherit a lot from the elementary schools that are out of our control. I don't know how to ask this, but are the two elementary districts doing a good job of having the programs they need to keep kids in district?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I can tell you, you know, the Hollis School District, for example, does not have any out-of-district placements. And I can tell you, part of that is the services that they provide kids. I mean, they do a very nice job. And, you know, one of the things that I didn't talk about in this presentation is, you know, we just established, again, Amy, in her wisdom, saw some students with some significant disabilities coming into pre-K, students that, we're talking about 3-year-old kids,
Yeah.
that would have started their public school education being sent off to a school out of district, and, you know, said, no, let's create an intensive needs preschool program. And I'm telling you, pulled this off in a couple of weeks, you know, hiring a teacher, hiring paras, making sure students had, you know, the adaptive equipment that they needed, the space, and, you know, the significant amount of money that she saves. But even more importantly, being able to educate a group of 3- and 4-year-olds in their school, in their community. I mean, it's really an impressive thing. It's, you know, when the need arises, and we manage resources well and get the programs in place that need
So
to.
you mentioned Hollis has 0 out-of-district placements. That's half of the equation. What the other half? How are they doing?
Oh, yeah, and again, we've got to be careful not to measure the success of a district by the.
No,
you
I
know,
understand,
yeah.
but you mentioned.
Yeah, oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
All I want to know is
Yeah, it's just
how many out-of-districts are
Yeah.
headed our way.
Yeah,
That's all
yeah.
I wanted.
Yeah, so I think it's a relatively small number. I'm going to say around 4 or 5
Okay.
total, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got the sense.
But again, also, Tom, and I know you know this, like, you know, we have kids in district whose program costs, because of the services that they provide, can often be just as much, and in some cases exceed that of the students in out-of-district placements. So, you know, we have to keep that in mind too, that even though we may say there's not out-of-district students coming in, if you look at all the services that we may provide a single student, it can be pretty significant in excess of some of those out-of-district placements.
I understand.
And then just lastly, just as a little bit of a side note, I just want to say, being 3 months in to this position, I still consider myself a little bit of an outsider. I get to work very closely with Amy and Kelly to see the efficiency at the SAU in terms of management of resources, the scrutiny of every, purchase order requisition. I approved a purchase order requisition the other day for $15, right? Every nickel of money down to the granular management of human resources in terms of maximizing the impact on kids, but the efficiency and saving money for the district. I always knew that as a building principal here, that the SAU was very efficient, but to go over there and see the efficiency and the collaboration between Kelly and the business department and student services, it's absolutely remarkable. And so I'm excited to work with this team moving forward. And I appreciate all of your support and the questions, and I can certainly get back to you on some of these areas.
I have to say, Bob, I think one of the big ironies is this whole Medicaid thing, because a few years ago, one of the big pushes that Amy brought in was really pursuing the permissions from families to enable us to get the Medicaid reimbursements and things like that. So the irony of all this time later, really, after all that work of getting families to cooperate, give us the appropriate approvals and things like that, and now we have this ruling that just kind of flips it on its head.
It's really tough. And it's tough for everybody.
Yeah.
I don't, maybe I'm misremembering, I don't think you mentioned the exact, the rough dollar amount that was going to impact us. We discussed it beforehand. But
for Medicaid to schools?
Yes.
Yeah, so the number for the co-op, the revenue that we received last year was $170,000, and obviously that number can vary from year to year, but we're projecting that would be a revenue loss of around $170,000.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bob.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Thank you
it.
Thank you very much.
Very nice presentation.
Let's do a little kind of applause then.
Great, and if anyone has any other follow-ups, just, we can, feel free to reach out and we'll get any of the other questions that come up to Bob. And of course, we'll all be kept up to date on future rulings and decisions, so. Okay, moving on, next is the financial update, and I think what I shared with everybody is the MS-25 and our year-end results, and then Kelly is also going to give us a follow-up on some of the questions we had as a result of the audit.
Yes. Did you want to go over just briefly the year-end report?
Yeah, let's do that first.
Okay. So, like Darlene said, you have the MS-25, but just to make it a little bit more simple, the breakdown for the year-end is good news. In early May, we were predicting, excuse me, a refund to the taxpayers of about $80,000, and we've bested that by about $400,000. And I would say that's a combination of increase in revenue and savings on the expense side. And again, we'll give most of that savings credit to Amy again. Her department had managed to save money that was not necessarily expected. So
that's that. So what is that other revenue? Because the 165,000.
There's a number of things in that line. One of which is revenue from Brookline for the NECC program, because they had a student from there that came over, and we received tuition from Brookline for that student. We had E-rate reimbursements for the wireless that we put in. At the time, we weren't sure we would get that. That came in, and then a lot of other minor things. Yeah,
but that was
those are the biggies. Yeah.
So what's the bottom line being returned to the district?
489,000.
489?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good.
Yes, considering we had thought it was more like 80, that's really good.
Could you back up and clarify the tuition payment from Brookline?
So that NECC program,
Right.
program that Bob was describing, one of the students that attended that program was from Brookline. And so that district paid the tuition for that student.
From Brookline Elementary?
Yes, from CSDA.
Yeah, I'm sorry, okay.
Oh, so we were able to,
It was a sixth grader.
I was just going to say, because it's sixth grade, so it's kind of like a middle school type program.
They determined that was the best way to provide his services.
Sorry,
Yep.
Matt.
Okay, thank you.
And Brian, sorry about that.
Any other questions on
Yeah, that is a just
Very
remarkable
nice.
change from
Right.
where we had been kind of watching this
Yeah.
all year.
No,
So
it was a nail biter, but we came out really well. And just on a side note, the food service department killed it this year. So we will be able to add close to $100,000 to that fund balance, which will really help with the 5-year plan that we're developing. So great news on that front.
So what was the big reason for that big turnaround?
For what we're returning to the taxpayers?
No, for the 100K.
just the food service.
Oh, the
piece.
food service,
Is it
I'm sorry.
the food? Is it
It
the
was
staff?
a
Is it
combination of a lot of things. It was
productivity?
it was better recipes. It was food purchases that were more in line with some of the regulations reduced a little bit, so we were able, so you don't have to have that
So basically,
horrible
things that the
wheat-pressed
students
pizza.
like. That
Yes,
was about-
that factor increased, as well as better recipes, as well as my new food service director. I give her about 110% of the credit for that, if that's not really mathematically possible, but she deserves it. She really turned the program around in all of the districts. So,
Well, thank you.
you're welcome. And then somewhere, let me pass this out. This is a spreadsheet based on the finding that I have one, yes. The finding that the auditors gave us on the student activities account. This represents what missing information that they found for FY18, if you recall, not FY19. And actually, did I save a copy of that? And you'll see there that what the different various categories are. So I will say that most, if not all, of that information has been identified. A lot of it came from emails, not necessarily, it was just maybe the lazy way of requesting checks, but we have provided for both FY18 and FY19 most all of the missing information to the auditors, so we're in a good spot.
Oh, so you were able to get back to them then with
Yep.
follow up with them on the
Right, I mean, that won't
invoices that were
change the
missing.
results of the FY18
Right.
because it's done, but we should.
But they were legitimate expenditures that we
They're
were able
absolutely
to.
legitimate. They're.
So if someone's making a request by email, are we kind of like printing it out and attaching a check request
We are
form
now.
to it? And-
I don't know that that was consistently followed in both years. So our staff is extremely clear right now on what they need to do going forward. So,
Which is, what, again?
which is, if it's only an email that you're getting and not an invoice, you're attaching that backup. So there's not one check that goes out now without some sort of backup to support why that check was.
Like an invoice of some kind.
If we have an invoice, we will
email
definitely give it.
explanation.
But in some cases, like you'll see for the middle school, there's a couple of checks written to the Hollis Brookline Co-op, which is probably something that came from me or from the business office to send over to Fund 23, let's say. So we are not following our process and being lazy and just sending an email. So we need to get better about that at the SAU as well, so.
And
All that sounds good. So it sounds like one of those areas where we're all comfortable with it, but 3 years from now, we find out that there's a problem that bled us for $25,000 because somebody figured a way around the system. And I certainly don't think that's happening now, but, so if I send an email to the office with a request for payment, and a check is cut to me based on that email.
Well, it depends on who you are in this scenario, right? So if it's me, they're probably going to cut a check, but they're not going to cut a check to me because nowhere do you see my name here. But it's just we've been lazy about doing that. We are going to start following the process much better. we have checks and balances on this because an approval still has to be made.
I was just gonna say, so is there like a two-signature approval?
Right.
For any check request?
Yes, and there still is, but the check request, not so much. But the staff is really crystal clear now that they need to get as many actual invoices as possible. If it's an email from me, which they need to now say to me, Kelly, you need to fill out the check request and get the proper approvals.
So what percentage of these do you know ahead of time that this expense would be incurred? In other words, I'm planning to do the following and it will cost so much money and I will be submitting the invoice to you next week or
Me
next month.
personally,
No, I
or-
mean, the individuals who incur the expense, that they want reimbursement. Is there like a
gonna vary.
process for letting you know that this is about to happen so that?
No,
No.
because I don't really have a lot of visibility to student activity accounts. It
Okay.
happens in the school. So on a monthly basis, a report comes over to our business office that gets scrutinized, and then questions can result from that. But
So who are the primary signature, the people signing off on the checks are gonna be, say, at the high school are gonna be Rick and Christine Bumpus?
yes, and probably Lauren, because you need 3 in case.
You need 3, okay.
In case there's.
And so here, it would be Tim, potentially Yolanda Flamino.
Yep.
And,
Probably Jen Campbell, the special ed director, yeah.
okay, so, but who manages the student activities account?
Oh,
here?
Melissa, I'm sorry,
It
she's
is
the
Melissa
secretary,
Hildreth.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So those
Well-
are, so any request that comes in is gonna go to, say, Melissa or Christine Bumpus, because they're like
Yep.
the office manager,
Yes.
whatever.
Senior
role,
secretaries,
Senior
yeah.
secretaries. And then from there, before they issue the check, it's approved by
Yes,
a building administrator.
yes, yes.
Okay, so there's, okay. so
That's the
there's-
part that was missing with an email.
Okay, I got it. Okay, thank you. That's good.
Okay,
Yeah, appreciate it.
sure.
And similarly with deposits that come in, it's the same type of confirmation of checks or cash that's coming in through the office.
Yes,
And there are sign-offs on who's submitting it, who's accepting it,
Yes.
where it's being deposited. all of
yes,
those
and we
things.
are bringing more and more of the student accounts over to the SAU in Fund 23 because the auditors are tightening down, not the auditors per se, but the GASB rules are tightening what kind of accounts a student activity can have. So they really have to be student activities. And if they're not, they need to come to the SAU.
So does our current process fit our current policy now?
You know, I'll have to review the policy because I don't know that word for word, but
Probably.
my idea of what the policy is, yes, it does now.
Yeah, it's just good to have the policy match the
Sure.
practice.
You have a very good point.
Um,
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a tangential question over here.
Okay.
Any idea what the Brookline Neighbors Fund is? I'm not familiar with that.
I thought it was you.
The
It's a poker
Brookline
fund.
Neighbors
No.
Fund, is that's a
It's
student?
on the list
Oh.
school.
for the middle school,
I
yes.
know, that's interesting. It could be a donation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay.
It's a payment too,
What is it?
so.
I have no idea. That's why I was asking, but
That's
nobody
a
here seems to
question for
know,
next
that's
week's-
fine.
That's a question for next month's meeting.
Next month is
Yeah.
it, where are you seeing that? I'm not.
At the
the
very
last
bottom.
The very last one.
Oh,
Last
there,
entry.
okay, I see it. Well, actually, I might be able to answer that. Oh, wait, I have the high school, hold on. Because I do have.
You
some
say you
of
found
those.
most of the invoices, right?
Yes, most, if not all. Let's see if I can tell you what that is. If I don't see it, I won't waste your time, because I
Yeah,
know
it's,
Lauren's going to yell at me any minute for taking too
Yeah.
much time. I'm not seeing it in here, but I can certainly get that for you.
That's fine.
'Cause
It stood out, it's like, what the
It
heck
does
is that?
stand out.
So-
It's a good question.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
I mean,
Okay.
how come the Hollis neighbors didn't submit a request, huh?
Maybe they had an invoice for it, so it wouldn't end up on the list.
Yeah. Thank you for.
Yes,
for-
thank you very much.
For breaking
Sure.
that down and
Sure,
giving us the kind of
absolutely.
magnitude on that. Appreciate it. Oh, it's the
Excellent.
End of the year too, right? Might have had something.
Lots
to
of
do
good
with-
news.
with
I'm
the,
sorry,
it was at
again?
the end of the year, so it might have had something to do with like the, end of the year celebration for
Sure.
middle schoolers or something
It could be,
like that.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Kelly at this point?
I did, coming off the budget balances on the current expense report, there's a line item for the site improvement, it's 19,000 overspent for the easement cost.
Yes.
Was that the cost of the easement, or was that just the,
That's what went over that account line. I think the cost of the easement was 24.
okay, all right, thank you.
Mhm. Anything else?
Okay, great. We're going to get back to Kelly with some of the later items on our agenda. But next we have the school board update. Cindy?
The main things, I guess, for the budget was we talked about the tech ed renovations, and we had a spreadsheet, but that is a live document. It's constantly going. But Andy's keeping a really close watch on, what goes in and what's out. I think there was one outstanding question as to who was funding the cost for the laser. They were going to talk about that one. Everything else is pretty, Andy felt comfortable with what was coming out of the general fund and what was coming out of the robotics fund.
Okay, maybe eventually as kind of all those things kind of
Actually,
wend
I
their way
kinda-
through.
Do you
we'll just
have,
kind of
yeah, I have the one that we had at the board packet, but I just.
Oh, is it in the board packet? Was that in the
One
board
was,
packet?
but like I said, it's a live document. Andy
Yeah.
said that night that there were some changes, even, as we speak,
I
kind
know
of.
that I think at the August meeting, there had been some discussion with members of the robotics team giving public input and things like that. And so when Andy came here, he kind of talked through those issues were kind of
Right.
working toward resolution. But at the end of the day, it did look like most of that 98,000 would be spent
Right.
between the renovations and equipment.
Yeah.
Right,
However
some of
that's
these,
determined.
right, some of these are still estimates, but right now, there's about $4,000 left in that fund. And we have purchased about $22,000 in updated equipment for the tech ed department. So that's,
So one of the things I was thinking of doing, because that article was a kind of extraneous thing, I have a pretty set format for what I provide to the town report in January, but maybe depending on where we are, a reminder that was passed and kind of just kind of an update on how some of the funding, like a general percentage breakdown, X amount to renovation, X amount to new equipment, X amount to program development or something like that.
Okay.
Because I can just imagine that between January and March, there'll be someone at some point that comes to a microphone and says, hey, whatever happened to that 98,000?
Right.
And the March meeting isn't necessarily the place for that because
Yeah.
we're talking about going forward.
Or, on the other hand, they can say that worked so well, how about an initial idea?
Okay, well, anyway, no.
There is some of it that'll be encumbered. I think the decision was kind of over Christmas break we have one asbestos issue
Oh,
that they're
right.
going to take care of.
Yes, yes.
So
Right.
that won't be encumbered until later in the year.
but it's factored into.
Yeah, it's estimated.
It is
It's
the
estimate.
estimate of it,
Hopefully they
yes,
won't go
of-
over that.
Of taking the wall out and installing that rolling door, so
Right.
that's going to be about $6,000.
Okay, and ultimately, if there is anything remaining, that's going to be turned back to the
Sure,
taxpayers anyways.
absolutely.
And the field progress is going well. They're pretty much done with moving the dirt. We hit ledge, but it wasn't that much. We thought it was going to be a 5 or 6 day project. They were able to do it in 3. So that was really the only overage we've had. If they had gone 5, it was like $12,000, but it ended
Right.
up being less than that because they only did 3. And actually, I have a plan that if anybody wants to look at it after the meeting, they can.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, I have one from our last. We're meeting every week with the project managers and the architects, and still looking at mid-November as the finish date. And the only other thing that we really didn't do more than mentioning it is Holly mentioned that she would like to get an apportionment committee together.
Okay. there any discussion about the composition of that committee?
No, it was at the very end of the meeting, and she said she would rather form one. and have
This
it
will be
going.
apportionment for determining how the funds being gifted will be allocated?
No.
No,
what
the
that is?
the apportionment committee for
Hollisbrook
the
Clinic.
Hollis
Hollis
Brookline.
Brookline.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
because
All right, all right.
we're going to be
Okay.
facing that, coming up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she wants to, I think we're going to talk more in depth in the October meeting.
Okay, great.
And that was about,
Anything else?
and I am sure he probably mentioned to you, he did mention to us that the SAU budget that he was looking at is up about 3.6%.
Yep, so that's actually a good lead-in to our
Segue for this.
next topic, which is the SAU budget. So the budget that I shared with you was the one that was discussed at the first meeting of the Budget Subcommittee, which was fully attended. Sometimes that doesn't really happen, but it was fully attended. It was last Friday. And the biggest change really to the budget is really contractual increases, and the biggest addition would be the inclusion of a facilities director for the SAU. The way it is presented in the budget that was shared with you is that it's presented as a shared resource, so about half of the salary and benefits are included in the SAU budget, and the other half would be shared among the 3 districts. It was the strong opinion of the majority of subcommittee members present that we would have preferred to have seen the entire salary and benefit amount included in the SAU budget in full, rather than have it be halfway there. It was Andy's plan was to do it over a 2-year cycle. So the first year it was going to be half, and then the other half split among the districts, and then the following year the entire salary would go into the SAU budget. The members present felt very strongly that it was an important enough position, something that's needed in the across the district, that it really just needed to go in full. So Andy was trying to be mindful of the level of the increase, and and to just manage what that increase would be, because if we were to put it in full, it would make the SAU budget increase to closer to 5.8 or 6%.
5.6 or 8, something like that, yeah.
Right. So again, the budget, the members felt strongly that it should be included in full. The budget itself goes before the governing board next Thursday. Are you going to be presenting it with that
Linda will,
in full?
yes.
Okay, so it'll be added to the budget, another 32,000, I think, gets added to the budget. So what the budget discussed there will be a 5.8% increase. When we also did, because it's early in the process, the GMR face is being refined. There might be just some other refinements with training, conferences people may be attending and things like that. We also put forward the suggestion and consideration of maybe moving some of those conference-related and some of the professional development items at a magnitude of about $10,000 to actually use the unreserved fund balance, because the projected fund balance is going up closer to a 9% range, so it would be around, the anticipated fund balance would be 160, just shy of 161,000, and try to keep it to a target range of 7 to 10%. So that 161,000 would be in about the 9% range, which is a little bit, on the higher end of where we like to see that capped. But conversely, use of the unreserved fund balance tend to try to reserve it to those kind of one-time expenses and not things like salaries and things that are recurring costs. And in this budget, there just don't happen to be a lot or any one-time costs. So we did ask Kelly and Andy and Gina to go back and look at some of those things like conferences or some of the professional development.
What we will present on Thursday does not have that piece. We were in a time
Still
crunch,
working on
so
it.
yeah,
Mhm.
we're gonna
So
definitely.
it's putting in all of the
Yep,
the
it's all in,
facilities
so it'll be
director.
good news, later
But
on.
it would
for the
seem to
next
me
year.
that if you reach that 10% value and you haven't used it, you don't need to ask for more to replenish what has been used, right? As far as the budget process. You know, like as another item?
Well, they're not asking from, what do you mean? I'm not sure I know what you mean.
What happens when you hit the 10% target?
Well, nothing. I mean, it
Right.
continues to,
Stays there,
that's the
right?
only budget that.
So there's
if
no
you-
need to request additional funding to,
Oh, no, it's not requesting
We
additional
we
funding.
don't
It's
request,
requesting
yeah.
relief in the budget, so to use some of the funding to relieve the budget increase.
right.
Yeah.
So that's still a benefit, right?
Yes, but, you know, again, the problem, the decision is what are we really using the fund balance for? You know, because
Right.
if it's to relieve, it should be more targeted to kind of one-time expenditures than the ongoing costs of personnel and things like that. So it's,
Right.
Because then you pay for it the next year.
you pay, right, when we're not accessing it, or, you know, something else comes up, some emergency expenditure at the
Right.
SAU office or something like that, so. One of the other projects that's taking place is a consideration of a renovation of the SAU facility, the main office, but that'll be managed through the Hollis School District budget.
Right.
So they're looking at putting forward a bond proposal that renovates the barn and the building to some degree. They haven't just decided yet exactly to what degree. And some other capital improvement projects within the Hollis School District. But that'll be coming forward in the March timeframe.
Okay, that
And
won't
not,
affect
it will
SAU
not
budget.
affect this
No.
SAU budget. In the future, the effect it would have is potentially changing the rental income stream, because with a improved building can charge a higher
Right.
cost per square foot
Right.
back to the districts.
Right.
But that hasn't been determined yet.
What's the salary and benefits of the facilities manager?
I believe it's around 60.
67,000, I want to say, was the
Salary?
salary, and then
Okay.
I think we put a two-person plan in for the budget.
Yeah. Wow, that's,
And Linda did some research on that, and that's consistent with what her research showed, so I
Okay.
think I mean,
Wow,
there's gonna be
okay.
people that make
Salary
more and
versus-
some that make less, so.
And just to be clear as well, one of the increases that we were looking at for this budget was including the Assistant Student Services Director position, as well as the transition position, and that transition position is being removed from the next budget. So if that were to come up as a question, it is not a funded position in the next year's budget. And the current position now for the Assistant Student Services Director is now vacant, because it's still a funded position in the budget, but the position as of today is vacant because that person moved to Hughes and they're looking to fill that position. So there'll be some upside in the budget at the end of the year because we're not paying that position. Hughes is now, Hollis is now paying for the services in their district, so there'll be some
We are
change
active-
there. But we're actively,
Yeah, we're
but we're
actively-
actively
yes,
looking,
yes.
and it is a funded position going
Yes,
forward.
yes.
So.
And
Is
a need,
that
yes.
facilities position, is one of the benefits the retirement package?
Well,
Are they,
no, I mean, it'll be just like any other administrator at the SAU.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And the other non-financial impact was a proposal to change the vacation days that were offered to the support personnel at the SAU office. Currently, those employees are year-round employees. We don't hire substitutes if they're out. But what the SAU office was proposing is an increase beginning in year 2, from year, so going from 10 vacation days to 13, in year 3 from 10 to 15, and so on. This is included in the package. So again, this proposal does not have a financial impact because the employees are being paid for their 262 working days, but it was meant as, a good faith effort to kind of, give people some more vacation time. And
Yes,
things like that.
retention.
Yes, retention proposals.
We can't offer him a big salary, so.
Mhm. So there'll be a follow-up meeting in early
November.
November,
I haven't
because
scheduled that yet.
there's a public hearing in December
Yep.
to approve this budget, and I think that was it. So, any other questions or anything we want to bring forward?
I have a non-related question based on personal experience.
Okay.
I guess there's a new automated system for calling staff when they need to come in.
New?
These are like substitutes?
It's not new.
So how does that work?
Well, you can either use it online, I think you're talking about ASAP, and you can use it online on your computer, you can use it with your phone.
So what would prompt, we're getting calls all the time now at all types of weird hours during the day.
Okay, you can
So how does that-
request to have your name removed from that list of
Okay.
calls, yeah.
All right.
Or on that website, there's actually a choice to change the call times.
That's right. So you know
But if you don't
something.
answer the phone and you don't cross-check that you've answered it, they keep calling you.
Right.
Sure, that's the way
Yeah,
the
but
system
you
is
can-
set up.
You can set it up if you go into the website, or you can remove it permanently, but if you still want to get calls, but you don't want to get them anytime after 2 o'clock, you can
Define
set
it.
You can define that in
Okay.
the,
Yep.
on the website.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just realized I need one more. Okay. So, moving on then to our SAU, our FY21 planning process, I shared with everyone a budget cycle meeting schedule.
By the way, that was very good.
That was fantastic,
Yep.
wasn't
I loved
it?
it.
Tom Guillen put that together. He is the
Oh, you
master.
didn't do
I
it?
did not do it, and I'm
Oh.
happy to give him the credit for it. He saves everyone a lot of work by putting together this awesome schedule every year. And color-coded and everything. So what we have now is, let's see. Let me try to find the co-op. Public hearing. I have one thing I would like to confirm, but for right now, we're
Well,
at.
and we
Oh,
have Jim O'Shaughnessy looking
And
at.
reviewing it, so
right,
great. We have
so-
legal counsel reviewing the document.
Yeah.
We do think it meets kind of all of the requirements and whatnot, but right now, as anticipated, our public hearings are the first week in February. Hollis is moving some of theirs to the second week, and there are some proposed dates in March as well that coincide similarly, the beginning, kind of throughout March and culmination on Election Day. So this isn't a speak now or forever
They're
hold your
addictive.
peace, but there is not a lot of latitude with moving some of the dates around. So as I said, I really do, assuming it passes legal muster, I just really do want to check the 5th for the co-op.
Okay.
before
For,
we accept it.
for the,
So,
wait, the public hearing?
for the public hearing,
So that's what date, 2/5?
2/5.
Okay.
Wednesday.
Okay, let me see if I can,
And then we have Wednesday, 3/4 for the annual meeting. I can do that tomorrow.
now usually, all right, that works, never mind. I was gonna say something, but forget it.
Okay. So the other thing I shared with everyone also, and I'm not sure if you all saw the update I sent out this afternoon. Sometimes when you send things through Google, you don't get a copy of what went out, and you just never know who
Oh,
got
yes,
it.
thank you.
So this deliverables document, we started a few years ago, and it was just to give us, because we had two budget committees, a finance committee, taxing the business office with the same or similar or different requests, and this was a way to just kind of put it all in one place. So I handed out, Kelly was kind enough to go in and make some great recommendations, and that was the reason for sending out the revision earlier today. So what this does is just break down kind of what we're anticipating through the process. So we'll push some things to October because the health census and the hiring, the savings, and through the change in the staff over the summer would have been for September. but we'll push that to October since we waited and are just kind of going through this now. I thought I wrote in, why am I not seeing the health census? Do you see it? I'm not reading it.
No, I remember seeing that before, though, I swear.
Under October at the end, the health insurance utilization report, is that what you're?
Well, I just sent it over a new one. Did you just look at the new one?
Yeah, we're crossing that out.
Yeah, we were crossing that out. I swear,
I know, I saw it too.
good lordy.
You have a health insurance utilization report
Right.
on October
No.
for Hollis Bodcom, not the,
No, that's
No.
gonna
The
get
co-op
crossed
bug
out.
count.
Different.
That's gonna get
different.
crossed
Okay.
out when we get to Hollis, so.
Good golly, Miss Molly, see, I hate
Wow.
Google, I swear. Okay, so the health census report, I really thought I put that in September. Isn't that why I sent you that email?
Yeah, I thought you did too. I feel like I
Okay.
read that myself, so I don't know what to say about that.
Okay, so in September, there would also be a health census report to go with the hiring savings report and attrition report, but we will push, that will be a September item, but since we're in September now and don't have that, we'll see that this
Yes.
October. But going forward, that's a great September discussion. It really is a good prelude
Yes,
to
yeah.
where we
Yep.
go in October. So I will update this again and, I don't know, check my Google Doc and see what the heck happened there, because all the other changes are in here, right? Yes, use of trust funds, public hearing, yes, everything else is here except for that. So, right, we did the MS-25 and the year-end results. When we gather again in October, oh, well, actually, it was a nice switch. We did the special ed kind of overview this month. That kind of flip-flopped with the savings in the health census report. But we'll have we'll do preliminary guidance, continue to work through if there's anything as a result of the governing board looking at the SAU proposal. We'll have an idea of where the tax rate setting takes place, and we can follow up and finalize dates for meetings and hearings and whatnot. We have in November then the next round of the budgets. We review the capital improvement plan, the principals come, we look at enrollment, we update guidance again, we'll have some state aid information. Now December, I think last year we ended up not having a December meeting with the school board, just the way the dates fell. We were around Christmas. And I don't even think did we end up with a joint meeting last year?
I don't know that we did.
I remember having a meeting with them.
We did? Okay, maybe we pushed it to January.
Okay, maybe
Okay.
it was January.
But usually that would be a December item, and kind of we would work through those residual items that need to be worked through in January, move on to the February public hearing, the March annual meeting, and around we go again. So I think this is a great summary that just kind of keeps us on track. I think I had gotten kind of behind in looking at it. We do have a kind of, some similar items and agendas and things that come up, but I think the most important thing is we had previously had a health insurance utilization report, and I think that was really during those years where our GMR had just skyrocketed and things like that. We really needed kind of an understanding of where things were going, but that can be kind of as an aside depending on how GMR works out, things like that. Right now, the SAU proposal has an estimate of 10%. We don't know exactly a 10% change in the rates,
Right.
but we don't know where that'll exactly flush out quite yet. So I don't know if anyone else had any recommendations for anything else they'd like to see included here. We get to the big areas, we get to food service, technology, the CIP. I mean, we really do hit all of those big areas throughout the year. But I think this is a good way to just kind of keep us on track. So, okay. And that's really all I have at this point. So next, what we'll anticipate having before the October meeting will be that first, we'll have a first view of the budget?
Hopefully.
Okay. And we'll talk through, I'll put the cover sheet of the guidance formula in front of it, and we'll work through kind of our assumptions on inflation and things like that. and see where we come out with guidance in October. I really do like to finish the October meeting with a preliminary guidance number, and I reiterate every year that it is preliminary and is subject to change based on new and great information that we get throughout the process.
But do we have to vote on it in October, or we'll just,
We always vote on it to give a
Okay.
preliminary guidance number.
all right.
Mhm. So we'll get that information out in a timely fashion, and everyone will be prepared to.
What's the date of the October meeting?
Let's see.
The 24th?
Yes, it would be the 24th.
Thursday, the 24th.
Mhm. Mhm.
Next meeting on the 24th.
Okay.
By the way, you never assigned the process observer for
I
today.
did, Lauren.
Lauren, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm observing.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah.
I felt a little bad because you're not feeling well today.
I'm observing very quickly too, because we might be done early.
So I don't have any other announcements. We've kind of talked through, agenda building is just the budget review, so I don't really have anything else at this time unless anyone else has any other announcements.
I see that the state has finally agreed to on a state budget.
Yes, I did hear that.
So that will hopefully be providing some good news for us, at least some knowns for a change.
Yeah, yeah, knowing something is,
That's, yeah.
it's a positive step.
Process observer.
Stellar, it was just stellar. We're done 25, or 30 minutes early.
I don't really recall the last time that's ever happened, so. Great. Again,
Well-run meeting.
reminding everyone that the next meeting is on October 24th. We'll get information to you so that well in advance. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn at 7:56 PM.
So moved.
Second?
All right, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.